is what's the biggest asset you've got on your fantasy baseball team? Power? Everyone's got it. Speed? No one's got it. How about that starting pitching, Craig? Starting pitching right now, ridiculously insane.
Yeah, and both in season-long leagues and daily leagues, I mean, you have to be hitting on this pitching. It's incredible what we've seen at the start of the season. And, last year there was so much uppercut swing, and there was so much swing and miss, and everybody was trying to hit home runs, and home runs were at a premium. But I got to tell you, this year it looks like it's going back the other way. I mean, pitching is just dominating. I saw Jake Arrieta pitch yesterday, a one-hitter. Some of these pitchers who I didn't even expect to be on the radar are on the radar right now, and I don't think it gets any better than tonight. I mean, Howard, we're only going to get this twice a year at most with Kershaw and Scherzer facing off against each other. So I'm sure we'll talk about that later, but there is no doubt that in your season-long league, if you attack pitching, you probably made the right move. And in daily fantasy, boy, I mean, you're taking a huge risk counting on a number 4 or a number 5 starter on virtually any team in fantasy baseball. But when you got the aces out there, you have a good shot. So it's hard to navigate through it if you don't. And me personally, in my season-long leagues, I'm doing okay in most of them. And the only reason why is because I own those top-end starters. If I didn't, I'd be a little nervous right now.
Yeah, this was definitely one of those seasons where I walked in saying, I got to grab myself that ace, get that anchor there. Even that second and third tier, I mean, you look at Garrett Cole, Aaron Nola, what these guys are doing right now, absolutely fantastic. Waiting for, Jose Quintana to get his head out of his ass, and hopefully maybe he remembers how to pitch. That's been an absolute nightmare. But, yeah, that's a big thing for those of you who are sitting at the bottom of your standings. What's your ERA and your WHIP look like? All of a sudden, this whole wait on starting pitching, that mantra, it's really not the way to go anymore here. So I'm with you. I'm with you completely. I love the fact that Kershaw and Scherzer are matching up. Arrieta last night, it was rock solid, and it was actually a little bit on the surprising side, I'll tell you. I mean, first of all, Jameson Taillon, that dude was hot trash, man. Yeah. He did to me what Andrew Triggs did to me the night before. It was absolutely unbelievable. But on the other side, 2 days ago, when Triggs did it to me, my Pirates stack, absolutely juicy. Nothing better than that. Helped me actually take down the MLB ace over on FanDuel, which was fantastic. It was like $10 became $800. Easy peasy. What was I thinking going back to that stupid well again, Arrieta, who I own shares of in seasonal, and I'm like, let me just wait. Arrieta will get into that groove, like Lance Lynn will get into that groove, like Greg Holland will get into that groove, Alex Cobb won't get into that groove because he's pitching in Baltimore. But some of these other guys will, and Arrieta turned around and, I mean, destroyed that Pirates stack. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it brings us to kind of the interesting topic that we've talked about here on the live stream before, is as the season goes on, the hope, Howard, for a lot of these really bad teams is going to disappear. And it's starting to disappear already for the Reds, who fired their manager. The Royals can't get out of their own way. I mean, I don't even know what to make of the Orioles at this point. And so you look at it and you look at those teams in the same division, and Philadelphia looks like a really good team all of a sudden, and their pitching looks really good. So you jump on those Astros pitchers. 4 out of the 5 starters on Houston are in top 10 in strikeouts in the major leagues, not just in the American League, in the major leagues. And the Red Sox, they win 16 games. Rick Porcello's 4-0. Chris Sale is going to be there. And you have some other options on Boston, too. David Price, even though he came out of the game the other day, looked good in his next start. I think you got to start rolling on these good teams and start chasing those wins. And especially with these teams that are so bad, I just can't believe it, that we're going to see a season where maybe 4 teams lose 100 games. I mean, usually it's like one team that loses 100. Boy, I think, and even on tonight's slate, I think there's some opportunities there also.
Yeah. Folks, we're having a couple of technical difficulties with our Facebook live stream viewing over here. That doesn't seem to be working out right. You can catch us on the Fantasy Alarm YouTube page, catch us on the homepage of fantasyalarm.com, and then, of course, you can find us over on Periscope. We're there as well. Get your questions in. Craig and I definitely happy to answer any and all things you're going to want to end up dealing with. Now, let's talk about some of these bottom-feeding teams, Craig, because one of the things that we've talked about in the past was like you could deal with a closer on a bad team. I remember when
Right.
I was making my bones. I was making my bones on saves with Joaquim Soria, and the Royals were winning like 50 games a season there because he was still saving 25 to 30 of them. That's not happening right now with a lot of these teams, but there still has to be some sort of fantasy action that you can get and really make a maneuver. Like when you look at the Reds, okay, Raisel Iglesias, no, this is not going to work out for me. I'll still own him because he is a closer and he will find some save work. But are guys like Schebler, Adam Duvall, when they do bring up Nick Senzel, are we still looking at picking on some of these guys and grabbing them? Like for the daily aspect here, I'll target against these teams with the starting pitching, but am I really going to be safe doing that? Schebler and Duvall, once those two are kicking it up in the summertime, those bombs are going to start flying out at Great American Small Park.
Yeah, and listen, that example of the Reds is an example that we should use for all of these teams. If you kept the pace with Cincinnati and Texas and the White Sox and the Reds and the Marlins, I mean, you'd have 120 lost teams across the board. We know that's not going to happen, and we know every team is going to win 50 games minimum, probably closer to 60. So, the Reds are an example of a team that both in season long and DFS, their offense is going to get going. They have too much talent there. But I think Kansas City and Tampa are definitely two teams that are kind of bottom feeders in terms of the American League. And remember, they get to that trade deadline, they're going to be desperate to move some of those players if they can to get players back in return. So I'd be looking for young players on both of those squads to come up and do well. And the other thing that I don't really buy, I know Detroit is off to an okay start in terms of offense, but you got to look at who Detroit has faced so far. And they were really blowing the Orioles away in terms of their starting pitching. And they're going to come back down to earth. So, I think a lot of teams are going to move players in July. I think young players are going to come up. We have a young player coming up right now for the Toronto Blue Jays today who I think will be interesting in terms of fantasy. We'll see what he ends up doing. But every week you see these players start to come up, and then you have to make the determination for yourself. What is the purpose behind it? What is the purpose behind Ronald Guzman? What is the purpose behind Lourdes Gurriel? And if you think that player can stick in the lineup, you got to attack that player and hope for the best.
Yeah, listen, as far as them getting younger and being able to feed off of them, absolutely. What do you say about guys who have the potential of being traded? Like, let's take a look at like a Chris Archer or an Alex Colomé. Are these guys who you're looking at and they're struggling mightily right now? Will that change of scenery help them out? Are these guys who, I mean, listen, I'm not dumping Colomé because he's a closer, and you can't take him out of that role because you kill his trade value around MLB if you end up doing that. I'm not dumping a guy like Chris Archer, but there are other guys out there who could be pieces on other teams where you think, okay, maybe that does happen. I mean, I got to figure that, even just on the, I don't know, what was was it a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal that Moustakas
1 year?
1-year deal that Moustakas signed with the Royals? They're going to have to start trading him, to another team. You can't figure that they're going to want to hold on to him again. So how do you address guys like that, players who are most likely to be traded? Do you go in on them? Do you try and buy low on some of these guys and hope that the change of scenery helps? You might have to suffer for at least another month or two, though.
Yeah, on April 20th, I don't know that there's a lot that you can do because, teams can change quickly and some teams can turn it around. I think Kansas City is one of those teams where, I don't expect them to win 80 games, but I don't expect them to lose 110 either. So, they'll get on a roll eventually and they'll look to move some pieces. In terms of fantasy, it's not something that I focus on now. Maybe a month from now, I'll start taking a look at that and start to see where these players could end up just because April is so fluid in terms of that. What also will happen is teams like Houston and the Red Sox and the Cleveland Indians, what they'll start to do is unfortunately acquire these players, Howard, that are on these teams that aren't very good, and then they become secondary pieces for some of these teams, and they don't even have the fantasy value that they had before. We saw it last year with the Houston Astros. They acquired Francisco Liriano. Not that he was a huge fantasy asset, but he didn't play at all. They acquired Cameron Maybin from the Angels. I mean, all he did is he stole that base in the World Series and got everybody free tacos. Beyond that, he didn't do anything with them in the last month of the season. So we'll see these players come over. The Dodgers will acquire some players, some pieces also, but a little too early to speculate on that. Now, as far as guys that are on the verge of losing their jobs just for performance or ineffectiveness, I think that's another subject. And I think last night we saw that with Matt Harvey and the New York Mets. I don't think that anybody was really invested in Harvey this fantasy season, but at this stage, on my morning show this morning, I set a total of 3.5 starts the rest of the season. What would you do? Would you bet over or would you bet under? Adam Ronas, he said under. I said over because you just don't know how things are going to play out. But think about that, Howard. We're in the 3rd week of April, and we're already talking about some players being removed in the rotation, removed from the closer's role. And those are the kind of things that if you don't start taking advantage now, by going to the waiver wire and adding players that can replace those players now, you're going to be in trouble. You may find yourself in a situation in a head-to-head league, for example, where you think, oh, yeah, I mean, Matt Harvey was my 5th starter. I'm fine with that. He'll make us. And then he doesn't end up starting anymore. So you got to start paying attention to that now.
You definitely need to start paying attention to that. Who, the Mets? Hey, yeah, I love it. We got our boy Rick Wolf producing for us today. Diehard Mets fan. He can't. He's not allowed to chime in here, so we can rip on this team as much as possible.
Let's have at it.
Right? Do you, as a fantasy owner, though, do you look to the Mets deeper into their potential starting rotation and say, well, okay, if they're going to ditch Harvey, who's next man up there? I think it's Jason Vargas.
Right.
Are we really going to look to Jason Vargas here for fantasy purposes? I mean, come on. You thought Harvey's trash.
He won a lot of games last year in Kansas City. He was an all-star. He was great in the first half. He won't have a repeatable season that he had last year. There's no doubt. But again, if we all are going to play the streaming game in fantasy, no matter what league you're in a 12-team, 15-team league, it is tempting to watch people like us talk about this and then all of a sudden see a start against Kansas City, the Marlins, the Rays next week, or San Diego, and say, wow, that's a juicy matchup. And then you find yourself on the wire, you hit that button. I'm just going to start him for that one game. And sometimes you hit. But, there are going to be pitchers that are going to be starting. There's a pitcher tonight, Howard, that I haven't heard anything about. This is my first time, on the Arizona Diamondbacks. His Cook is his name, Koch. Full transparency.
I think it's pronounced cock. I think it's cock.
I know nothing.
Could be Koch.
I know nothing.
It might be cock.
I know nothing about him, and he'll start tonight. And those are the kind of guys that, if you're not watching and you're not paying attention, the guy he gets called up and he pitches well. Now, on the flip side, there's a guy. If his last name is Skoglund, you don't have to attack that guy, and you could leave that guy alone. But there are going to be players called up. Next week, I think there's an opportunity for one or maybe even 2 pitchers in the minors that could have a very big fantasy impact in terms of starting pitching. Usually, I'm not in on those. But Buehler on LA and Soroka on Atlanta are 2 of the top 10 pitching prospects in baseball. And at the very least, I think in all of your leagues this week, you need to add them, stash them, and see what happens.
Yeah, listen, I love the Soroka call there. Luis Gohara is another guy from that Atlanta depth that you can look at there. I don't know if they would consider having both of those guys in the rotation or not, but Soroka looks like he's going to be the guy to get that first call. I know you and Jim got to talk to Alex Anthopoulos about it. He seemed pretty excited about Soroka, which once you start hearing that, once you hear that in the voice of a GM, when the GM himself starts getting a little bit excited about a player, you kind of have to pay attention to that. Let me ask you a question here before we get to some questions. And again, guys, we'll hit your questions all over Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope. We're all over those. The Facebook one is up and working here. But before we get to some of these questions here, let me ask you a question. Just from a fantasy philosophical standpoint, like the DFS world, obviously when you play DFS, and I've gotten a lot more into DFS over the past couple of years with it, do you find that seasonal players are getting screwed by the DFS hype? Like, you could take a pitcher who's got a great match. Like, let's take David Koch, for example, here tonight. Let's say Koch. Sorry, my bad. Who are the D-backs playing? I mean, D-backs are playing tonight. I'm all over the place here. I can't hit. So he's going up against the Padres. So let's say this dude has this great start tonight. DFS owners are like, yeah, this is amazing.
Could happen.
Right, of course it could happen. Without question, it could happen. Sun shines on a dog's ass at least once. Now, I haven't, dived into Koch's numbers either, and we'll have to, wait and see. But let's say this guy has this phenomenal start, and then somebody turns around, and they're like, oh, okay, this guy was great, killer outing, 6 innings of, 8 strikeouts, 1 earned run. This was beautiful. And they go and they grab him in seasonal. And they end up dropping a pitcher who might be struggling a little bit right now, but let's face it, there are pitchers who are struggling right now. Like, I can't say Quintana because he's probably a little too high end, but let's say Estrada gets bombed by the Yankees tonight. Let's just say Estrada gets destroyed. Lance Lynn gets, peppered by the Rays.
Cole Hamels is another one people would probably drop at this point. Yeah, he pitched well, right? Mm-hmm.
So is that the move though? Like, is that the way to go?
It's not a question that I can answer. It's a case by case situation.
Sure, you can.
Right?
You can tell us.
It's a case by case situation for me with all of those guys. It's really, I can't say, but I am of the idea in fantasy that it's so unpredictable. The game is, and there's so much luck involved as it is, that if you don't take those risks and you just sit back and let somebody else pluck these guys off the waiver wire week after week, eventually you're going to strike gold. You have to just keep firing away on it. And I think that, and listen, for every Barnes that we throw $150 at, there's going to be a Lucchesi on San Diego, and that's the difference. So I think you have to try. So far, anybody who we've gone to the waiver wire and added has been kind of a failure to a degree. I mean, that's been true. At least for me also. I mean, Barnes was a failure. Tyler Austin doesn't look like very much, and I invested a little bit in him. So the $100 players haven't, in terms of fab budget, haven't worked out, but it's going to happen. At some point, someone is going to come up, and someone is going to become a very big part of the team that you draft in fantasy. So I think you have to keep firing away at it. And at the risk of the player is always the key. It's not a question that you could just answer. You have to look. Somebody says, well, I have Matt Harvey. Should I pick up Koch on Arizona? Yes, you should. You're not really risking anything at that point. I have Marco Gonzalez on Seattle. I drafted him. I thought he was going to be good. I'm really not sure. Should I drop him and pick up Koch just to see? Yes. I mean, those are the answers. Now, on the flip side, when you see a pitcher, for example, a week ago, and I got this question yesterday from a lot of the DFS guys, Dylan Peters, you follow the Marlins, what do you think? No, you do not, because he's not on a good team. He's had 1 or 2 good starts. What is really your upside there for a player like that on a really subpar team? What's the upside? And you walk somebody through it in terms of question. Now, with Koch on Arizona, who I don't know anything about, here's what I know. He's on a good team. They're playing very well. The pitching is good. The hitting is good. The defense has gotten better over the last year with Arizona. And if he sticks, there's certainly a possibility. What I know about Arizona is their best pitching prospect is John Duplantier. He's in the minor leagues. It's not this kid. I know that for a fact. But who's to say that kid doesn't come up also? Case by case with all these situations.
Yeah, the DFS crowd they look for that bargain basement DraftKings second starter. Like, that's, if you can get, and we've seen it now with Dylan Peters. We've seen it with Robbie Erlin. Yanni Chirinos was a big one there.
Too. Yeah.
It was like, if you can give me 5 innings and 7 strikeouts and you can minimize the damage and keep it to 3 earned runs or less.
That's it.
Then that's a hit. Then that's a great move there. I tried out with Dylan Peters last night. That didn't really work out for me.
You should have called me before. I could have told you that. But, a good example of a guy that everyone was cutting after the first week in fantasy that I owned, and in one of my leagues I benched him, but I didn't cut him, is Tehran on Atlanta. Like, there was zero confidence in Julio Tehran after week 1. No one had any, and I wouldn't have had any either. Another player who I think a lot of people didn't have any confidence in, and you should now. How about Vince Velasquez after his first start, Howard, for the Philadelphia Phillies? Like, I have him in 2 leagues. I was worried as bleep. I'm like, that's it. I made a mistake. And now Velasquez on a good team where the bullpen is pitching well. They're about to get some guys back. All of a sudden, Velasquez looks like maybe a 3-starter on your fantasy team. So you don't cut those guys for the guys that are coming up out of the minors. But beyond that, I think you throw darts, you take your shots. At some point in June, as long as you have $400 or $500 left in terms of fab budget, kid gets called up, you strike your $200 on that or a closer, and you go for it. But I am all about the 30 on Guzman, 10 on Lourdes Gurriel, 10 on Tyler O'Neill. Just they come up, you throw some money, somebody else may get them, but if not, you get them, and in a week you cut them. I mean, it's funny money, it's fake money that we're using, and it's meant to be spent.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's hit some of the questions here. Ralph Labuda with the question on every fantasy owner's mind. I love this question here because this makes me laugh a little bit. Why is David Dahl not called up with cargo hurt?
David Dahl already.
So frustrated. Yeah, I mean, enough with the David Dahl stuff. It is clear. If this isn't clear to people now, if this hasn't been clear for the past, I don't know how long, the team is no longer high on David Dahl. The team is not looking to David Dahl for anything at this point. The dude can't stay healthy. He's got to sit in the minors. He's got to prove himself. Raimel Tapia is a guy who definitely has a higher upside as a leadoff hitter for the Rockies than David Dahl does right now. David Dahl has fallen to the wayside, in my opinion here. In my opinion, he's fallen to the wayside as one of those couldn't miss guys who everybody missed on because health issues, and then the Rockies were like, well, we've got everything else here that we need. We've got enough outfielders here. We don't need to deal with this anymore. Unless you think I'm wrong here, Craig, and David Dahl is on your guy.
I think a second half is a possibility for him, but not imminent. And, just because a guy plays at Coors Field doesn't guarantee success. I like to take chances on those guys just like everybody else does. But if you singularly took the biggest chance on the Coors Field player in 2018, the name wasn't Dahl, the name was McMahon. And Ryan McMahon is 4 for 34 with the Colorado Rockies, batting, you do the math there, $120. And the second, and I believe when Nolan Arenado comes back tonight, I think they may send McMahon down. And he may stay down for a long time. And look what you invested there. And a lot of people were high on McMahon. They don't even know who he is. They just know, he plays at Coors. It's got to be good. Not always the case, and and the Rockies they're playing kind of. I think they're taking a cue a little bit, Howard, like the Dodgers do. They're just kind of mixing in players here and there, and nobody outside of Blackmon and Arenado, LeMahieu, Story, everybody else moves around. So it's a nice thought to just think you're getting 81 games at Coors. It just doesn't always play out like that, and it looks like this new regime, or at least the new way they're doing things, is they're very willing to mix and match their outfielders right now and first base.
Yeah, there's been a lot of misses in Colorado, like a lot of misses. Ian Desmond never lived up to what he was supposed to do when he went to Colorado. No, not yet. He's still getting the opportunity. I was using late-round picks on McMahon, trying him out and seeing what happens there. But again, we've seen this always. It's that helium, that preseason helium, that mock draft helium that guys get when they start, I mean, remember when Todd Walker went from Minnesota to the Colorado Rockies? Mm-hmm. He was never heard from again. Who was the guy?
Drew Stubbs? Drew Stubbs was
Drew Stubbs was another one. There was a middle infielder. I can't remember. It was a few years ago where all of a sudden he was getting all sorts of helium. I can't remember his name right now. He obviously never panned out. And yeah, listen, that's kind of what we're sitting on right now with Colorado. You can't touch their pitchers. I don't touch their pitchers. You may be able to get away with Wade Davis as a closer there, but yeah, you're right. Outside of your top 3 or 4 guys on that roster, it's all just interchangeable parts, and there's no consistency at all.
Yeah, and Trevor Story, by the way, was a great indicator. That worked. And so it's natural for a fantasy owner to go, well, if Trevor Story came up and all of a sudden he became 29 home runs, boy, McMahon must be 29 home runs. And it just doesn't work that way sometimes, and this is a way that's going to play out.
A little DFS action here from my man Sean Sarrow, who commiserated with me last night on Twitter about that Pirates stack, which was just hot trash.
Can't win them all.
Hot trash, right? It was so funny, too, because I texted a buddy of mine who was like, who's a huge Pirates fan, and I'd given him the Pirates stack the day before when I had won the Ace, and I was like, he texted me yesterday morning, and he's like, what about it? Do we go back to that well again today? I'm like, hell yeah, you go back to that well again today. Absolutely miserable. So Sean wants to know, he's looking at some BVP numbers right now. He's looking at some first baseman for DFS. He's got a couple of guys who he really likes. Okay. So let's just talk from a matchup standpoint here. Sure. Jose Abreu, 5 career home runs off of Justin Verlander. He's 3,500 over on FanDuel. Goldie going up against Sanchez tonight. He's 4,300. Do you pay up for him? Or how about this one here? How about Pujols, $3,300? Who
against Samardzija?
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I think that would be the one that I would dip my toe in on that one. I mean, Samardzija's first start, since coming off the DL, which is not going to be an 8-inning start. I mean, we know that the Giants bullpen. Even with Samardzija out, I think that there's some opportunities there for him. So yeah, I think that would be one that I would be interested in. One of the other matchups tonight that I like, it's just going back to this well over and over with Tampa. I said it against Texas, and it worked. Tampa took 2 out of 3. I mean, Nelly Cruz tonight, right-handed batters against Mike Minor in Texas in that ballpark. Yeah. I think is going to be juicy tonight. I really do. King Felix, by the way, pitched pretty good his last time out. The total is 9. So the high expectancy for runs in that game, and could be a close one. So that's one of the matchups that I would be looking at tonight. And I think that the Samardzija one is a pretty good one also. Detroit's has some hot bats. They're going to play a doubleheader today. In the second game, I'd be a little bit interested in that. I don't know how that factors in on the slate, but those are the couple games that I'm looking at. Fading Daniel Norris, right-handed hitters for Kansas City against him tonight.
Yeah, Sean, one of the things that I always do, and not just Sean, obviously, anybody who's watching, go to the pitching coach over at fantasyalarm.com. Go to that page, okay? Click on the advanced stats, okay? And when you look at the advanced stats, what it does is it takes all these numbers, but it shows you the WOBA splits, weighted on base average, splits for a lot of these pitchers. Now, granted, the sample size isn't huge right now, but you can see some of the guys who are struggling. Like, you can look at lefty bats against Kendall Graveman. You can look at lefty bats. You can look at some potential lefty bats going up against Chris Archer, who has struggled mightily against left-handed hitting right now. Kyle Hendricks, Ben Lively, Lance Lynn, Ulyss Chassin. These are guys who are struggling. If you go to the pitching coach page and you see that data table and you organize it by weighted on base average versus lefties or righties, that kind of helps you along a little bit there. What I would also suggest doing, and you bring up an interesting point here about Samardzija's start not being a full 6-7 inning start because it's his first go of the season. You look at the Giants bullpen though; they've posted a 3.59 ERA right now so far this season, 62 innings, a little more than 62 innings that they've pitched.
That's better than I thought.
More than a strikeout per inning also. It's a 9.34 K per 9. What you guys need to look at also is look at how some of these bullpens are doing. It's a great tool, especially if you see a pitcher like Koch from Arizona tonight. You don't know if he's going to get 5 innings here. So look at what the Diamondbacks bullpen is all about, because while you might be targeting a guy, hitters against David Koch, if David Koch is out of this game by the 3rd or 4th inning because he's thrown 78 pitches and he's given up 3 or 4 earned runs, that Diamondbacks bullpen has the best ERA in baseball right now at 2.02. Okay, so all of a sudden your bats, which might have been great for their first 2 at-bats against Koch, guess what? Bupkis the rest of that game when the bullpen starts shutting you down. So look at starters who might not go the distance, but find out the ones with the crappy bullpens. The Royals bullpen sucks. White Sox bullpen, hot trash. Even the Nats bullpen is struggling right now. Now, you're not going to target anybody, any hitter in this Scherzer-Kershaw matchup. No. Not even close. But for the future, when they say, we're going to put A.J. Cole on the mound again today, right. Now you can not only target hitters going against Cole, you can target hitters going against their bullpen. Your Marlins, Craig, that bullpen disgusting. So when a guy like Dylan Peters goes and he only goes 5 innings and he gives up 4 or 5 runs, at least you know that that bullpen is not in complete shutdown mode and your hitters are still going to be able to go after guys. It's definitely something that you need to pay attention to and you need to target.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, from that perspective, I don't know what the interest level would be in that game with Miami and Milwaukee tonight. And I'm not even saying that the Marlins bullpen has been very good, because you're right, it hasn't. But they have their long man type guys. This kid Chris O'Grady, who's on the DL. Their other long man, if the starter gets hurt, is a pitcher named Odrisamer Despaigne, and he got hurt last night. And then they brought in Junichi Tazawa, and he got hurt last night. So, I really have no idea what's going to happen tonight if the pitcher for the Marlins, Richards, gets in any kind of trouble. He may have to do what they call in baseball is wear it. He may have to pitch 6-7 innings no matter what.
Take it for the team, baby.
Yeah,
Take it for the team.
They don't have a lot of options, and that bullpen for Miami last night, boy, they were okay, but the 6 earned runs by one pitcher in 2/3 of an inning, that's gonna inflate that ERA.
Brewers bullpen actually has been fantastic.
It has. It's been great. Hader, Jeffers, and Albers, Barnes, anybody who they've thrown out there.
I was just looking to see if I could do a game stack here of Marlins and Brewers, but it looks like you don't want those Marlins going up against. Yes, you want them against Ulysses Chassin, but once he comes out of the game, the Brewers go into complete shutdown mode.
Yeah, Hader has been so good. Like like the Millers and Haders and Davinsky. Like I just like to go against. You could pick a player or two based on the right matchup, but to go against those teams with those high strikeout rates that those guys are posting, stay away from me.
Yeah, nothing. All right, bunch of questions coming in here. Eddie Hamlin wants to know, should he be worried about Jose Quintana? Now, I'm going to turn this over to you because I'm heavily invested in Quintana. I'm willing to wait. I've got him on the bench right now. I haven't, I'm going to keep him there until he starts to turn it around because it's just been downright abusive. Is it going to get what? Can you give me an It Gets Better video here, Craig?
Yeah, here's what I think, and I'm telling you right now, the Braves' offense is very good. It's excellent. They have really good hitters. Freddie Freeman, Inciarte, Albies, Preston Tucker has hit great. You cannot ignore. They put up another 12 spot or 13 on the Mets. They put up a 12 spot on Quintana. I'm telling you now, Quintana's going to pitch great. He's going to be fine. It's just he ran into a hot team in Atlanta at the time. The weather wasn't good. Look, Quintana's never going to be an ace of your fantasy staff, but I just cannot see another 2-inning, 7-earned run performance. I would bet you that he gets better starting now.
All right. Quintana's not pitching today, is he? Where is he?
He's pitching this weekend. I know that.
He's pitching this weekend. Yeah, no, it's Hendricks today. Hendricks today. Get those left-handed Rockies bats. Oh, it's in Coors. Hello. I love that. All right, let's keep going with some of the questions here. Thoughts on Sonny Gray? Ralph Labuda wants to know about Sonny Gray going up tonight. You like him or no?
Not really, no. I'm kind of off on Sonny Gray at this point. I don't know that he has the same curveball action that he's had in the past. Vegas is telling us an 8.5 total, which says that he may pitch well. It may be more of an indication on Estrada, but the Blue Jays are playing exceptional. They have pretty good hitting. Could he throw 6 innings of 4 earned run, 3 earned run ball and pick up a win? Yes, but he wouldn't even be a cheap option for me tonight. I would dig deeper.
Okay, all right. Well, again, not just for DFS purposes here. Let's talk long term.
Even season long, I'm not huge on Sonny Gray based on the way that he's looked. No. Okay. I actually have a little more faith in Felix Hernandez than I do Sonny Gray.
Come on. No, you don't.
I'm telling you, King Felix, he looked really good last time out against Manaea last Sunday. I would not be surprised to see King Felix reinvent himself a little bit and be able to start again in fantasy. I'm telling you, I saw some really good things.
Do what Wainwright did the other day? I was sitting there listening to...
No, not Wainwright, no.
I was watching that game, and the announcers were like, wow, Wainwright really looks like he's getting more comfortable with that dip in velocities, kind of turning himself around a little bit. Had a really nice game against that Cubs team, but I guess that Cubs team was also pretty ice cold at the time as well.
I'm not as interested. I just would not dismiss King Felix yet.
Ooh,
And
ooh.
and by the way, good matchups against Oakland, against Texas all year long. Although Oakland's hitting the ball all right.
Yeah. Wait a second. I'm getting conflicting reports here. No. The Rock. It's a home game for the Rockies. It is a home game for the Rockies. They are not in Chicago, Ralph. They are not at Wrigley. It is not happening there. Not only that, though, chance of postponement in Coors Field. There's rain and snow in the forecast
Snow
right
again?
now.
Oh my gosh.
It's Colorado, man. It's the Rockies. What are you going to do?
Right-handed. I mean, I don't know what the splits are against Brandon Finnegan, but give me some of that action from Paul
always. Always give me some of that action.
Are they the biggest favorites? Yeah, they look like the big minus 210 tonight. That's the biggest favorite on the board.
Yeah. FantasyAlarm.com. Go to the Weather Center, folks. That gets updated on a regular basis. They start first thing in the morning at 8 o'clock. They look at the forecast, and they throw out some possibilities. Go to FantasyAlarm.com/MLB/weather, and you'll see that we've got a possible rainout or delay in Colorado with that game. Impact wins potentially in New York for that Toronto Yankees game. So maybe that 8.5 over/under is going to be a little bit higher.
Could be.
If that does happen there. So be on the lookout, guys. All right, so here we go. Boom. Scott Crump he says, I got rid of the 3 Royals pitchers. Good job, Scott. Welcome. Welcome
Reasonable.
to reality.
Mm-hmm.
Picked up Reynaldo Lopez, Nick Pivetta, Tyler Skaggs. What's your opinion of these 3? Season-long keepers or streaming options only?
Pivetta, I would start every time out, Howard. I don't know about you. Phillies are playing well. No reason not to. Lopez, I'm still not 100% sure on. Not a great team. It would be kind of a matchup-based thing for me. And as well as we've seen Tyler Skaggs, he reminds me a little of Gossman, to be honest with you. Like 2 really good starts and then not great. And I don't know that Skaggs is ever going to go deep into games either. It's going to be hard for him to win. So in order, I would go 2, 1, 3 based on the way that you pose those. Pivetta,
Lopez, and Skaggs.
And then Skaggs. Yeah, I know some people are high on him. But the way that Scioscia's treating this team is, I don't think those pitchers are getting deep into games, and then they're going to that multi-inning use of the bullpen there, like a lot of teams are.
Well, you kind of have to. You definitely kind of have to. Oh, look, I'm scanning through everything. Edward Rouse, look at you, Edward, all over the possible postponement in Coors. Going to turn everybody's lineups into hot trash this evening here.
Gotta love when those people say, hey, it's going to get rained out. It's like pushing that narrative away from everybody using Coors, And then Edward's going to use everybody at Coors tonight,
Right, all of a sudden it's not going to happen.
Edward, what did you do? I pushed all your viewers away.
No, listen, dude, it was like an absolute nightmare, that game against that Kansas City Royals game where they postponed it because it was too cold. Mm-hmm. And they did it after lineup lock. What was it on the? Was it the weekend? Yeah, right. I think it was like Sunday. It was like a Sunday or Monday when that happened. They canceled it after it was on the early slate. That's right. It was Rocky. It was Royals Angels. It was the last game time wise on the early slate. Mm-hmm. And after the early slate started, about a half hour, 40 minutes afterwards, they turned around and they canceled it because it was cold. They postponed it. And everybody who had Ohtani and their Angel stacks against Skoglund immediately, just bananas. Absolutely bananas. So at Fantasy Alarm, we're a little bit sensitive right now about the weather. So we want to make sure that we are alerting everybody in every possible way to make sure you just keep checking it out. Will I go with a Rocky stack in Colorado tonight against Kyle Hendricks, if the game does happen? Yeah, probably. I'll also probably stack some Cubs hitters going up against John Gray. He hasn't looked good either.
No, he hasn't at all.
But just keep in mind, you don't want to screw yourselves on your lineups there at all.
Yeah, I don't know what the pricing is on Zunino, but they just announced that he's back in the lineup tonight for the Seattle Mariners, and that's in that game at Texas against Miners. So if you're looking for a catcher in that game, remember how good Zunino was in every format last year in terms of home runs. I can't imagine him being too expensive, so I would keep an eye on him.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, when I'm dealing with lineups for the DFS format, like Zunino, I'm sitting on my DL in a few leagues because, when we got to talk, when Jim and I got to talk to Jerry Dipoto about him, I mean, he was really amped up about the power that Zunino has. And listen, I'll take a catcher hitting me 240, 250, so long as I know that it's coming with 20 home runs. It's
Absolutely.
those guys who hit 220 who only pop you 12 to 15 home runs who are going to end up killing you there. So Zunino, for that aspect, I dig him in season-long formats here as well. When you're talking about using a guy like that, though, in DFS, see, I'm getting all chucked up. Like, I'm getting the upchucks here, just thinking about it. Guys like Zunino, Matt Davidson, even Trevor Story to a certain extent. These guys are, to me, I use them more for GPP tournaments as opposed to cash games because they're so sink or swim. Like, you'll get as good a chance of them going 1 for 4 with a home run as you will 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. So Zunino, if he's min price, yeah, I'll throw it in there because what the hell, it's minimum price.
Right.
But if he's up a little bit more, we'll go from there. All right. While we wait for some more questions to come in, Craig, let's talk about some of the surprises that we've seen around MLB. I noticed that that you had Patrick Corbin listed as one of your surprises here. I don't really know if he surprised me. I'm invested in him in a number of different season-long leagues. I've used him in DFS, and he's been rock solid. What is it about Corbin? What's surprising you about him? And then who are some of the other guys out there who people might not be paying attention to but should be?
Yeah, the strikeout rate is what I didn't expect from Corbin. And if you remember, he was an all-star in 2015 at Citi Field. I was at that game. And then injuries have kind of derailed him since, and he kind of looks like what we thought Robbie Ray would look like. And between those two guys, I mean, if Ray is perfect or gets better, that's a really strong 1-2-3 punch, provided that Zach Greinke is there too. So I think in terms of pitching, Corbin's been the huge surprise there. In terms of hitting, I mean, Jed Lowry to me has been, the biggest surprise in the American League. I know that you had Billy Bean on your show, and he can say whatever he wants, Howard, but no one anticipated him being the best hitter in the American League through 3 weeks. Nobody could have. So that was a surprise there.
Do you buy into that? Like, do you buy into that?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, Jed Lowry, could he drive in 80 runs this year? Sure. 120? No. That's the difference there. And then we've talked about this a lot. Preston Tucker leads the National League in runs driven in. That's a huge surprise, and it could be coming to an end soon. There was an indication yesterday, I thought that was a key one in terms of Acuna. The Braves designated Lane Adams for assignment. You may say, what does it matter, Lane Adams? But, that means one outfielder's gone and maybe means the other one is coming. I took that as a sign. In the next maybe 2-3 days, I think Acuna comes up.
Okay, Acuna comes up. What does that do? That puts Preston Tucker on the bench? How do you put Preston Tucker on the bench?
On the bench, I guess. I don't know. I know that you're anti-Markakis, but I think he's going to stay in the lineup, and I guess Tucker becomes the 4th outfielder. Or maybe against left-handers, Tucker plays, more, which would get him up to, let's say, 350, 400 plate appearances. I think that's possible. But when I saw them, because remember, going into the season, in a couple of my leagues, what I did is I drafted Lane Adams and I drafted Tucker. Because it's April, and I figured, look, I'll piece it together. I'll have those two guys platoon him in and out in a daily league until Acuna comes up, and I struck gold by having Tucker. But with them letting Adams go, and again, Camargo is back, and they signed Bautista, so some moving pieces there, but that was a pretty good indication to me that we could be days away from Acuna, not weeks. So I think maybe Monday, Howard, or maybe even tomorrow or this weekend. I think he's coming.
Listen, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. What I'm not fine with is the Braves turning around and saying that they'd rather have Nick Markakis in the lineup as opposed to Preston Tucker. Maybe they want to trade Markakis. Maybe you want to showcase him there. But literally, Tucker has done absolutely nothing to warrant any kind of a spot on the bench or anything like that. You got to ride that wave until it breaks, and that's really what it comes down to for me. What's Nick Markakis going to do? He's going to pop you 7 home runs. He's going to steal you 3 bases. He's going to hit you 290. Okay, fine. He's going to hit you 290. But really, is that doing it for you? Is that what you want? Is that the bat you want in the middle of your lineup? That to me, that would drive me nuts. You mentioned Jose Bautista. Scott Crump wants to know: is Jose Bautista worth a stash for you at all?
I mean, more in the American League than the Braves. I just don't see the fit there. If Freeman's at first, and they have Flaherty, who's played very well at third, and in addition to that, they have Yohan Camargo, who was really good for them last year. So I think those two guys play third. I mean, Alex Anthopoulos is a longtime friend. They were with each other in Toronto, and maybe, I mean, dare I say, is this like a favor to try to get Bautista at least back in the big leagues? I'm not sure. It's really, honestly, kind of sad to me. I thought some team in the American League would take a shot on him, at least as a designated hitter, but these teams that are bad, they just don't want to waste that spot when they could be developing a kid for the year. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, 10 home runs for Bautista this year? How? Like, where? Where is he getting it? He requires an injury to me to be an everyday player at this point. I don't see it.
Okay. Over on Periscope, what is that? At Harkafella. Any thoughts on that trade? I have no idea what trade you're talking about. But he does want. But Harkafella wants to know: are you buying a hot start on Jose Barrios and Jameson Taillon, save for what Taillon did yesterday?
I like both pitchers. I think they'll both be viable. They don't fit into the top five like a lot of the other discussions that we had at the beginning of the season with those elite guys. But the combination of those two, if you didn't get one of the aces, is certainly good. And look, Barrios, I think we saw this coming. He's going to be an elite pitcher in fantasy. He'll probably end the season as a top 10 pitcher, I think, overall in fantasy. Taillon's wins are going to be a little bit limited because of the team he plays on. I can't see Pittsburgh keeping up this pace of a 90-95 win season. But, makeup and character are also a big part of this game, and you just mentioned two players that have that. So my guess is Taillon one bad start and gets back to what he was. And I like both pitchers, and I would not sell high on either. I like them both.
All right. Ralph Labuda, he's filled with questions today. Just traded Jose Martinez for Eduardo Nunez. Wanted that multi-position eligibility. Is that smart?
It depends on what you need. Two completely different players. One guy that's going to hit home runs, drive in runs. One player who's going to steal bases. The other thing, and look, Pedroia is going to come back, and Eduardo Nunez may not have a gig, and that's a month away or 2 months away. So, that's something else to think about. If Pedroia is back in June, where is Eduardo Nunez playing? I don't know. Do you have an answer on that?
No, I don't. That's that to me. And listen, Jose Martinez,
he could lose the gig too.
Yeah, he's going to be in and out of that lineup also. They just brought Jed Jerko off the DL. Matt Carpenter shifts back over to first base instead of having to play the hot corner there. They prefer Carpenter over there because it saves him on his back as opposed to playing third. So to me, yeah, it's basically it's two guys who could potentially lose their job, and it's, do you need the corner or do you need the middle infield? Because once Bogarts and Pedroia are healthy, Nunez becomes that utility guy that we knew Boston was going to go after him for. So I'm with you on that one there.
Nunez will potentially be more valuable than Martinez for the next month, but for the remainder of the season, unless if you're chasing the steals, then it makes sense. But if it's not and it's just a player swap, I wouldn't do it.
Oh, all right. At Harkafella finally telling me what this trade is. Are you ready for this one?
Sure.
Would you trade Madison Bumgarner and Robbie Ray for Jose Barrios and Jameson Taillon?
Madison Bumgarner and Robbie Ray for Barrios
and Taillon.
I probably would.
Yeah.
I probably would. Yeah, because I'm just adding up starts for the rest of the season. Mm-hmm. And if Bumgarner was there right now, I would say no. But the most recent report said another month for Bumgarner, right? You're getting more counting numbers, you're getting better stats from those other two, for sure. I would do it.
All right. Phil Mailer, he wants to know, he's saying he loves the show. Thanks, Phil. Appreciate that. Pick two of five starting pitchers for next week. You ready for this one, Craig? Here you go.
Let's do it.
Head-to-head points league.
Okay.
Joey Lucchesi going up against the New York Mets. Sean Newcomb at Cincinnati. Jacob Junis going up home start against the White Sox. Luis Castillo in Minnesota. And Eduardo Rodriguez in Toronto.
Castillo 1 and Newcomb or Lucchesi. would be the other for me.
Lucchese for me.
I know you're big on Lucchese.
Well, I'm big on Lucchese. It's a start in in San Diego.
Yeah.
And big lefty, great downward plane. What are the big bats aside from Cespedes? Really, I think that they don't concern me. It neutralizes Conforto. It neutralizes Jay Bruce. Cespedes at Asdrubal Cabrera, because I don't want to get corrected again. Asdrubal. He's a guy, switch hitter there. Okay, fine. But, the bottom end of that lineup there, I'm not so sure. I mean, well, maybe Wilmer Flores is in the lineup. Maybe he's not. Who knows? So
it's close for me. Newcomb has shown enough to make it very close for me, and it's against the Reds. The Reds potentially have a better lineup there. But again, their lefties, are Joey Votto and Schebler and Billy Hamilton. So, there's a case to be made for Newcomb also. I wouldn't dismiss it. Braves are also a better team than San Diego. But it's close.
Yeah. Okay. It's close. There you go. But we're both in agreement.
Castillo, for sure,
number one.
Yeah,
so what do you make of the slow start for Castillo right now?
He's going to get figured out a little bit. I talked to somebody about this yesterday in the game, and they said that not a huge surprise. Castillo came on out of nowhere last year. No one expected it, and now these teams have film. And when you go in the hitters' meetings, they show the film and show how to attack. This is going to be an adjustment year for Castillo. He probably won't repeat what he did last year, but after 2 or 3 starts, the pitching coach, and I guess it's Darwin now at this point, Danny Darwin, he'll have to come in, sit down with him, and say, hey, look, hitters are attacking you differently because of how you pitched last year. It's that's why they always call it the sophomore slump, because there's just no film on a guy in the first year. It's just minor league ball, and the advanced scouting isn't nearly as good in the minor league level as it is in the big league level. So, it may take some time for Castillo to get back on track, but not a huge surprise because, again, came out of nowhere last year, and now everyone knows who he is.
Right on. Right on. All right. Chris Wolf wants to know, should I trust Samardzija? He's joining us late here. Should I trust Samardzija tonight over Jake Odorizzi on Sunday, head-to-head points league?
Probably not for me.
Not for me either.
I'm not big on Odorizzi either, but
no, but he is pitching okay. He's pitching fairly well.
He's okay. But Samardzija, can Samardzija go 7 innings tonight? I would say it's unlikely. 5, yes. 6, maybe. 7, first start out of the box off the DL after 1 rehab start. I guess the pitch count you never know, but my guess is Samardzija 85, 90 pitches tonight, max, right?
Going up against the Angels. Now, I know the Angels' bats were quiet against the Red Sox here, but I still, you take a lineup that has Trout and Upton and Ohtani and Cole Calhoun and Luis Valbuena. It's a pretty tasty lineup to end up having Kinsler. Atop that lineup.
Not bad. Yeah, it's not bad.
Cozart, yeah.
I just never. It's like when you bring up some names, and I understand Samardzija did have a lot of strikeouts, had a good second half. Gossman had a good second half. It's just some names are just very easy for me to dismiss because I know most times I'll be right that they'll be wrong. And so, in general, out of 10 times, if you bet against Samardzija, you would think you'd win 6 times or 7, and that's more than you're losing.
All right. All right. Phil wants to know, can he start Newcomb over Castillo? Because he's all in on Lucchese. He doesn't want to give up on Lucchese. I love him for that. Would you consider Newcomb over Castillo?
Probably not. Not in that matchup at Minnesota next week that he's talking about specifically.
Yeah.
It's close, but probably not. The Twins' offense, is what? No Buxton. Logan Morrison hasn't done anything. So we're talking about Sano and Dozier, and that's it, right? More or less for Minnesota at the moment. Doesn't seem too formidable to me. How about you?
No, it's off to a slow start, but again, when you look at Minnesota, we got to keep in mind Minnesota's played like 5 fewer games than everybody else.
Does that help them or hurt them though?
Well, I think it hurts as far as what their stats are looking like right now, and you look at the fact that they just played this series in Puerto Rico, as opposed to I think they were considered the home team. They were considered the home team in Puerto Rico. So when you're looking at what their numbers are in Minnesota and on the season, I think that you have to give guys like Eddie Rosario, a little bit of a break and say, well, he hasn't been performing up to task, but he's also had, a bazillion rainouts and postponements.
Yeah, I think I think that's a fair point. I mean, but the key to this whole thing is how does Minnesota build a field and not have a dome in Minneapolis? I mean, what are they going to do moving forward in baseball? Can they even try to schedule a home game in April of 2019 at Target Field? Like you know what you're going to be up against. I think.
I mean, the MLB schedulers have to get their heads out of their asses on that one. Why is April not loaded with home games in California, the South, and in Florida? Like Miami should be hosting the entire time in the month of April.
And so should Tampa. Yep, they
Texas,
should be.
Oakland, San Diego, LA. I mean, those teams should all be hosting throughout April.
And the dome teams, Houston, Milwaukee,
Seattle, absolutely.
I mean, everyone wants that feeling of being at opening day within the first 2 weeks when your team is back, and I get it. But maybe it's just having 3 home games, to try and get just a couple of games in the middle of the month, like the 12th, and then just stop and just have the rest of the games played. Because moving forward, you can't have it. Are we getting a What's in the Shed today, or we're not getting that?
I was just waiting for you to say it.
This is it. We're ending the show. We didn't even do
it. We are. You want to know what's in the shed? What do you want? What do you want today, Craig? What are you looking for?
I don't know. I just want to know. Find something.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
anything will do. Just
anything will do. I'm gonna bust out one of my prides and joys here, Craig.
Okay, here we go. Oh, I see it. Oh, what's that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, baby. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, what's in the shed? I'll tell you what's in the shed.
Jam On?
This is my Jam On Fantasy Football Trophy.
That's nice.
Can we see it? You see that it says Howard Benner champion? You see the nice little guitar here?
That's last year.
This was this past season, absolutely.
Nice.
So for my boys at SiriusXM, Jam On, Ari Fink, Jonathan Schwartz, Andrew Brass, suck it. For my rock star buddies, Ryan Stasic, Mark Brownstein, suck it. Brad Sands, Chris Kuroda, suck it. And and then all my sports guys, Steve Gardner, Bob Wischusen, Adam Zucker, Chris Weaver. Well, Chris Weaver's actually got one of these, so I can't tell Chris Weaver to suck it. But everybody else, suck it. That's what's in the shed, baby. And I'll tell you what. Also, as far as fantasy football goes here, because this is a fantasy football trophy, I'm going to say this. If you heard my rant or Craig's rants on SiriusXM over the past day or two, best ball. So we totally disagreed with the best ball draft that went down yesterday for SiriusXM hosts. It's points league, best ball, pitching skewed like crazy. There was no way in hell that this draft had any kind of educational value, except for the fact that now you know that if you're in a best ball draft and it's points based, that you need all the starting pitching you can possibly have.
Congrats!
Right? Good job 3 weeks into the season here that works. But what I decided to do and what Jim Bowden and I decided to do also was we're going to do best ball football. We're going to bookend the NFL draft next week. I haven't figured out exactly which days it's going to be. It's either going to be Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, where Jim and I will be in the draft room with 10 lucky listeners or viewers, whatever you want to say. Now, you have to follow me and Jim on Twitter at Jim Bowden GM or at RotoBuzzGuy. You must be a registered user at Fantasy Alarm. You don't have to be a Playbook subscriber. You just have to be a registered user over there. We're going to do a 12-team best ball draft before the NFL draft, and then the same group of people, we're going to do a best ball draft right after the NFL draft, because now we know where all these rookies are going, where they're going to end up. So that's going to be able to show you how we view players based on situations and not just on their talent level coming into the draft. So you want in on that, email me, howard@fantasyalarm.com. I'll be more than happy to put you into the drawing there. 10 random viewers and listeners will get to draft with me and Jim twice, best ball format, NFL style. That's going to do it. Craig, how about some parting shots here for the baseball community?
Yeah, great night tonight. If you could stay up for it, if you're on the East Coast, Scherzer and Kershaw, you only get this twice a year at most. You may not even get it the next time these two teams face off. You're talking about the number 1 and number 2 pitcher in both reality and fantasy, in my opinion. You could throw Sale and Kluber in there for sure. Those guys are great, but boy, this is what it's all about. So looking forward to that tonight. And then, as you mentioned, Shohei Ohtani at the plate. We'll see what he ends up doing tonight. And then hit that waiver wire this weekend. As of right now, a little bit different than last week. I'm not feeling a ton of guys out there in terms of free agent acquisition budget. So that means what you got to do is you got to go to the waiver wire. And you got to look at everybody who got cut by other teams for maybe those mistakes that were made by guys like me or somebody else. Find out who was cut and maybe add one of those players. That's what I would be doing this weekend.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And to answer Edward Rouse's question, I have never sanitized this trophy. I'll take it dirty, filthy. Love it. Love it. That's going to do it for the
shed.
That's what's in the shed, baby. All sorts of germs, cholera, Hep C, you name it. I got it. Bring it on. That's going to do it for the Fantasy Alarm MLB live stream today. Big thanks to Craig Mish for everything. Big thanks to Rick Wolf for producing the action. We'll catch you guys Tuesday at noon Eastern. Thanks for watching and stick around.